listening to the Redneck Hockey Podcast, the official gatekeepers of the Trip Tracy fan club and the only Carolina Hurricane show fueled solely on barbecue, Bowberry biscuits, and storm brew. As always, I'm your host, Griffin Daughtry, and I'm joined by my fellow Caniac co-hosts, Connor Weeks and Alex Pace. This week, we discuss the final moments of the regular season, the growth of hockey in the Carolinas, and we answer questions from some of our Caniac listeners. If this is your first time listening, please consider subscribing to the show and following us on Twitter and Instagram. Without further delay, let's do that hockey.
I mean, we're professionals and we make plenty of mistakes.
Here on the podcast?
Yeah. We're professional podcasters.
Those are good mistakes.
I don't think we're professional. We definitely don't do this for a living.
Yet.
Man, I don't know what it is, but every time we schedule to record the podcast, it's like the one day of the week where the pollen levels are super high. So I sound like a damn Kleenex commercial character every time we record.
Yeah. Dude, there's like some kind of gas shortage now.
Yeah, I've seen and heard.
Yeah, I drove back from the beach today, and like literally every gas station that I drove past from Morehead City to Raleigh was out of gas.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, at this point, unless you really need gas, like if you have to travel for work, you're better off going to the grocery store and buying like canned foods.
Surviving there, yeah.
Yeah, because if gas is gone for longer than a few days, then, you know, grocery stores are going to run out of food. Hospitals are going to run out of medical supplies. Like that's going to be the bigger end result of no gas.
I just saw the pipeline was already fixed.
You can either bag up grocery bags full of gas like I've seen on Twitter, or you can just wait a couple of days and calm your tits.
Yeah, the news of the pipeline was, I think, just it hasn't even been long enough for it to affect the supply. People are just going crazy because they see the news. Like the gas stations aren't running out of gas naturally. It's just today people are just like topping off because they are afraid. And
a few of them did run out, and that's why everyone caught wind of it. So like two of them ran out, and then they ran a story about it, and then now they're all gone.
It's just
people were rolling up with trucks full of gas cans, filling them up.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like drove around. Like I went to the gym today and was like coming out of that parking lot by the Shell station by our old apartment. And there was like people lined up on P Street to get in there. I was like, y'all are insane.
Well, you have the people that are they're getting, huge canteens of gas because they think the apocalypse is going to happen in a week.
Yeah, it's just like when everybody was buying up the toilet paper. It's Mad Max season, boys.
Well, that and they didn't raise the prices. And so everyone just kept buying gas. That's the whole point of price gouging, is that it keeps the markets from going overboard and having a bunch of dickheads buy up all the gas or all the toilet paper or all the paper towels or whatever. That's the whole point of price gouging. Everyone thinks it's just being a dickhead and like cheating people out of necessities. And it's like, no, it keeps the necessities on the shelf, because look what happened. They didn't raise the price of gas, and now there's no more damn gas. Economics. Yay. All right. Let's talk about hockey.
Anyway,
who wants to start this bad boy off?
Well, yeah, what do we want to start off with?
I think the natural place is the Central Division champs.
Yeah, so we clinched the number one in the division for the first time, and I don't know how long. When was the last time we were number one in the division?
That was the last time when we won the Stanley Cup.
Wow.
There was a couple of last times that we won the Stanley Cup that are relevant for now, because we're coming off a couple bad losses against Nashville. Primarily, we ended that season in a loss to Buffalo, and they beat us 4-0. So
oh, really? That's
there
interesting.
are some parallels. I tweeted at somebody. It was one of our followers, but they brought up the monstrosity that was the first ever Hurricanes game that I attended. I think it was in 2005 of the 2005-2006 season. The Hurricanes that were like playing really well. They were on a stretch where they had gotten a bunch of points in a bunch of games in a row, and they welcomed the Atlanta Thrashers, RIP, to town. That night, let's just say, did not go well for the home team. They lost 9-0.
9-0?
Yeah.
Against Buffalo.
Connor and I have been to some games like that, but on the other end. Connor, you remember that game we played against the Islanders in like 08, 09 season? And like we just kept standing up. Every time we'd sit down, like we were sitting in the championship seats. So we had like the free pizza bar, and Connor and I were like the 13. So we're like sitting up there munching down on some pizza and hush puppies, and like every 5 seconds we're like standing up, spilling our plates of food to cheer. I think the score was like 13 to like 2 or something. It was something ridiculous. Like it didn't even feel like a hockey game.
Yeah, those were the days. I can't I don't have that memory to recall those games like you guys can.
There's certain games that just stick out. You know what I mean? Like the Islanders game. I don't know how I remember it was the Islanders, but it was definitely the Islanders. That sticks out to me in particular. That was before they got Johnny Tavares.
Yeah.
So like that was like their worst years.
See, I wouldn't have remembered that unless you brought it up. I remember it now, but that's really good. That's
I got these little golden nuggets stored in my brain. But I mean, like I remember my first Canes game as a kid. Little flashbacks with the boys. The first Canes game I went to as a kid was like we went as an Indian Guides tribe, and if you don't know what that is, it was like a YMCA program that was like more fun than the Boy Scouts. We'll just leave it at that. And we like they did like a father-son night, and you just like go out. We went out like we used to go to like monster truck jams at RBC Center, which is like the worst place to go to that ever. It's like the tiniest Coliseum ever, and they're trying to fit monster truck rallies. But we went to a Canes Bruins game, and I don't think I'd never been to a game, and there was like 5 fights that night. It was a pretty intense Canes game. That was like when I first learned that hockey was awesome. Like you didn't have to know. Like it's the same thing. Every time I take someone to a game who's never been to a game, they sit down and they go, "Holy shit, this is awesome." Everybody loves hockey if you sit down and watch hockey.
Yeah, you're immersed in it.
Yeah, I really think all the television deals and whatnot that the NHL has done this season is really going to help the sport. Because like you said, I mean, when people really sit down and pay attention to hockey, they love it. Like my brother, I mean, he's a bit older than me, but he's just a good old boy from Eastern North Carolina, and I took him to a game a couple of years ago, and he was like, "Man, this is awesome! Like, there's so much action, like so intense." It was just right up his alley, but I don't think that he was ever really exposed to it before that. And then like you said, the first time I took Lily to a game, I told her, I said, yeah, no, like they don't really fight quite as much as they used to. The league is toning down that a bit. Like there's not as many aggressive guys in the league now. And of course, like the first 4 or 5 games I went to, there was a fight, and she's like, "This is awesome."
It's funny how it can be so violent and so wholesome at the exact same time.
Yeah, there's an honor to it. Honor to the violence. Everyone likes basketball here too, so it's kind of like the ongoing action. What would you think the biggest sport is in North Carolina?
College basketball.
College basketball. So you have to compare hockey to college basketball and see like would that translate? Like if you're a fan of college basketball, how would you get into hockey?
I think you're right about it being they're both fast paced. I don't know if there's anything necessarily comparable other than that. But yeah, I mean, I could see people being like, yeah, I like basketball because it's fast paced, so I naturally like watching hockey. Whereas like you go watch a soccer game or a baseball game, 2 sports that I played and still like but hate watching. It's not even comparable to a hockey game.
Yeah. One thing I think that works for the Canes, especially in this area, is, I mean, when we're talking about college basketball, you've got 3 really good programs all in the triangle. And then you've got the Hurricanes, who are a professional team that have, like pretty much nothing to do with that sport, but they draw the fans from those 3 teams, like regardless of whether you're a State fan or a Carolina fan or Duke fan, if there are any Duke fans, they like the Hurricanes.
Yeah, we can all agree on the Canes. That's kind of a nice thing, even though I'll leave my comments about Carolina and Duke fans to myself.
It's like watching the Olympics when you go, when you watch the U.S. team, no one's like a Blackhawks fan or a St. Louis fan.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how people flock to Canes hockey as the team gets better and these major basketball colleges start to get crappier at basketball because they're already kind of fading into their golden years. They're kind of done, or at least it seems that way. Old Roy Williams is retired. That's going to be big.
Is not far behind him.
Yeah, I mean he's been all but retired for the last like 5 years anyway. But anyway, basketball, hockey, you can totally find joy in both. As far as baseball and soccer goes, man, I don't know. Mudcats is great, man. I used to go to Mudcats games all the time.
Until we get a Major League Baseball team, baseball in this area, professional baseball, at least at the Major League level, won't be super popular. I mean, the blackout restrictions in that sport are worse than the NHL's. It's insane. I mean, yeah, the blackout, the way that the blackouts work in North Carolina, the Reds, the Braves, the Nationals, and the Orioles are all blacked out in this area.
Oh my gosh.
There's 4 teams.
It's like not even worth trying to deal with.
That would kill all the revenue.
They're trying to funnel it into all those MLB packages. I don't even know what they call them anymore. I haven't watched a baseball game in so long. Pace came over during the playoffs 2 years ago, 2018, 2019 season, and was like going to pregame, drink some beers with us. And he's like, can we turn on the Braves game? And I was like, the first time I sat down and watched a baseball game in like 10 years since I quit playing. And I was like, God, this is awful. Can't do it. And it was like they were losing and Pace is just sitting on the couch miserable. I'm like, well, good thing we have hockey. Well, before we get derailed talking about how boring baseball is, no offense, Pace, I know you still love it. Let's swing back to the Central Division champions, which, as you brought up, has not happened since
The Thrasher years.
the Thrasher years. The last time we won the division was when we went to the Stanley Cup.
That back when we were in the same division as the Lightning and the Panthers and the Thrashers and the Southeastern Division.
And then they threw us in the Metropolitan, and we didn't see a winning season for forever.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it was only like 4 years. And then we had a one winning season, and then we went back onto a 10-year drought.
We don't like to talk about that. We don't have to talk about that. We're now the division champions.
So they've come out and said that we're going back to the Metro, right? Next season, presumably when things get back to normal.
I don't know if they have had any announcements. I think we will go back. I don't think this is going to be a thing next year. I think we'll play all the other teams.
I think we'll be fine to go back to the Metro. At first, I was like, I don't want to go back. I never want to go back. But now that I'm like looking at the Metropolitan, I'm like looking at the Central Division, I'm like, well, the Metro is kind of waning in its grit and its, glory, and all of those great teams like the Capitals and the Bruins are kind of getting old. They're slowing down. And now that we've seen the Central Division all season, they're absolutely picking up pace. And I would much rather go and play those old farts in the Metropolitan.
Yeah.
Well, how do you guys feel about the fact that we didn't win the President's Trophy?
Who's above us? Just Vegas, right?
Vegas and Colorado.
Colorado is now. So that only really affects us if things are reseeded. If we advance and Colorado and Vegas also advance, and we seed home ice advantage to Colorado or Vegas.
Right, so Colorado has 78 points and 2 games in hand. So if they win one of their last 2 games, then they'll have the tiebreaker over us. So
okay.
They're 2 points behind us right now. At where things are right now.
Well, I mean, we don't have that cursed trophy holding us down. So home advantage or not, at least we don't have a cursed trophy.
So I'm not butthurt that we didn't get the President's Trophy. I'm like very thrilled that we won the division because we don't have to play one of Tampa or Florida right off the bat. But the President's Trophy, to me, it's kind of like it was pretty clear that they didn't value winning that. They valued going into the playoffs healthy.
A lot of people seemed pretty upset about the fact that they just kind of let that last game against the Preds go. I think Kane's Twitter was actually pretty split on whether it mattered or not. And by a split, I mean, it was probably like 75%. Everyone agreed that it didn't matter. And then you had like me yelling into the echo chamber about how it wasn't important, but there was a better way to end the season than like a 5-0 shutout against the Preds.
Yeah, that does suck. I think, obviously that they wanted to rest their guys, but at the same time, we're kind of forced into this narrative where we have to not care about that last game. And everyone is kind of in a somber mood as far as like Caniac Nation, I guess. we're all kind of just like sitting around like, yeah, 3-game losing streak. We're hyped for the playoffs though still, so it's kind of like a weird mood. But we're going to have like a time alone to just kind of look at the season. And I think it's going to build up again. The hype for game 1.
I'm worried that this like last couple of game losing streak is going to just kind of carry into the team's overall mentality of like how the season was going. Like, I don't want the overall aura of the team to be like, oh, they weren't that good all along. Look, they're finally starting to lose. It's finally starting to wear off now that teams are getting back to health and things like that.
Well, Griffin, the cynic in you is definitely showing right now.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that can totally plague a team. Like I don't have any self-doubt, but the guys that have to play hockey this weekend might. Peter was out for most of the season. He comes back and like basically just, I mean, it's not that he was bad. He was actually pretty good, but the team kind of let him down, which
looked a little shaky on some saves.
And Peter's kind of a goalie that can be shaky. He was that way before. He's been that way now. Everyone's just so accustomed to him being good because he's been so good for the last 2 seasons. But like we talked about last podcast, goalies can, I mean, they can flip a switch like night and day, and you never know. And so I'm worried that these losses are going to affect him. I'm worried because like everyone's like, oh, you know, like our best players were on the bench or they were resting. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, but there's still plenty of important players that were playing on the ice, and it got to them. You could see it got to them on the ice if they kept getting their asses kicked. Like no one wants to get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an interesting nugget that I found this week. Obviously, we won the first 6 games, but they didn't score more than 2 goals until the 7th game that we played against them all season. And that game obviously was one that they needed to win to clinch the
Nashville
4th seed. Yeah. So they didn't score more than 2 goals in our entire season series until the 7th game, which they won 3-1. And then the last game, which obviously we were clearly punting and they beat us 5-0. So I don't take a ton of stock in those losses right now, but I do agree with Griffin. Like, say we come out and we lose game 1, then there's definitely going to be some cause for concern. And then the doubt starts to creep in. So I don't take a lot of stock in losing those 2 games or even how they lost them. But I do think that puts some pressure on us in game 1 and game 2. Even, I mean, like we almost have to come out and go 2-0.
Yeah, like we're not going to roll into the playoffs on a high like a lot of us expected to, and like a lot of us felt like we were about to. And unfortunately, Nashville is, because despite the fact that they know that they played our, you know, like half taxi squad team and a bunch of AHL players, they still think they just won the damn division the other night, and that's going to pay off for them. The thing is that Nashville and Carolina are both teams that can get rattled early. 2 goals down, either of those teams are going to like panic and get into a weird little funk. We've seen it all season. So, well, not so much for the Canes, but definitely for Nashville.
It was definitely like a game that mattered more for Nashville. And if we won, it'd been great. If they won, it'd been awesome. After they clinched, the second game was just them trying to win for Pekka Rinne. And the fact that they had fans in the stadium was kind of amplified things too, kind of amplified the intensity. Watching the game, you kind of feel you're on the wrong side of a narrative, just because like all the cheers for Nashville and Pekka Rinne was just, you could tell that it was just going to be a night where nothing was going to get past him. And for Nashville, that's great. It's awesome for them. And for the Hurricanes, unfortunately, we're just like on a bad end of it. It's hard not to focus on this game because it's the last game of the season.
Yeah, Nashville, to me, they were really trying to send a message in that last game. And I mean, they were being, you know, really physical, almost to the point where like they didn't really care if they hurt someone, you know, like, you know, you bang them up a little bit going into the playoffs, like that's even more of a win for them. So I think game 1, like we're going to have to come out and slap game 1.
Nashville's been full of dicks this whole season. They were super physical throughout the season. And I always kept thinking this is going to be a nice little rivalry that can develop. It never really got to be a rivalry because they never showed up to play and beat us. But, you know, you have to have that push and pull. It was mostly just them throwing a tantrum while we beat ass. But, yeah, I think you're right, Pace. This first game needs to be a big one. Like they need to come out of the gate incredibly physical. And I don't mean like the sheepish game where like you get hit hard twice and you get a little frustrated and you get chippy back. I mean, like they need to be the team that comes out and is throwing bodies into the boards, not wait until you get hit and then show up to play.
And if you take these last 2 games, we have to play 6 to 9 games straight of Nashville. We're going to get really tired of playing Nashville.
We're going to be sick of playing them.
So how do you think the Canes are going to play against Nashville with less fans than Nashville? Because I think Nashville can have 12,000 out of 17,000 fans, and PNC is still operating less than 50% capacity.
I think that's just such an unknown. We know how they played all season when, you know, some of the arenas were allowing fans and some weren't. But when it's a playoff series with the intensity and, you know, the pressure that comes from game to game, it's just such an unknown how that's going to affect them. It could be a negative, or it could just, you know, not phase them at all.
Yeah, that's what's going to be really weird this year. On top of everything else, there's no way to know. You're right.
I think it's frustrating because I feel like we could probably boost up the total fan attendance rate. And it's not like that isn't going to be possible come, what is it, June 1st is when Cooper's lifting the ban. It's like, what's 2 weeks going to make a difference, really? To me, it makes no sense to not boost the numbers at least up to something comparable to Nashville. Like, obviously, Cooper can't, like, make his decision based solely on the Canes, or maybe he can. I don't know. He's a huge Caniac. He should.
Yeah.
Maybe he's thinking about this right now. He's just like sitting in his office, like, what do I do? He's like looking across the way, and he's looking at the Capitol building, and he sees that stupid Tennessee flag over the building. He's like, no, not this. Yeah. But I feel like it would be fiscally irresponsible to not get more fans in the building, and it would also be detrimental to the team to not have more fans, especially if we lose one of these first 2 games at home and then they go to Bridgestone and they have to listen to those crazy we're rednecks, but they're hillbillies, those hillbilly chants, and there's catfish everywhere, and they're telling all the goalies that they suck. I mean, that's gonna be bad news bears for the team, especially if they're on a weird funk. If they come out of this last 2 game cycle and they're in a little, and they're a little gloomy and they're a little down, Nashville is the perfect team to get under their skin. They get under my skin, and I'm not even playing.
Ned's going to want to have that one ring to put on so he can turn invisible.
Yeah.
I love Ned. Yeah. I hope he doesn't have to go through that.
It's pretty tough to put your finger on why the Canes capacity is the way that it is, because right now the state of North Carolina is at 50%. And I mean, I don't really follow the NBA. I'm assuming the Hornets are kind of in the same boat where they're either at 50% or lower. It can't be a league thing that's limiting capacity. Well, I guess it could be. I did read something about Nashville is raising their capacity because they're installing like 3 HVAC units in their arena so that it kind of imitates being outdoors. And earlier in the season, you remember fans were like making fun of the NHL for removing the glass behind the benches, and like little things like that actually turned out to keep the well, you can't say there's no causation correlation, but there was less transmission from team to team based on things that the NHL had done.
Yeah.
And like, maybe it's the NHL that's holding us back. Maybe it's the team is reluctant to install temporary HVAC units because it's expensive. Maybe it's not the team at all. Maybe it's PNC Arena. They can't staff enough people, enough part-time workers to feel comfortable to host more fans. And there's a lot of variables that go into why the capacity is the way that it is. And I guess it's just going to have to be a wait and see type thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
because Dunn wants more.
Maybe it's been, well, that's my thing. I feel like it's not the team that doesn't want to get more fans in PNC because they have the most incentive to make sure that happens. And it just seems strange to me that vaccines have been available for 4.5 months and people are vaccinated and they're starting to lift restrictions, and yet it's still at this low number. And like, I still see people on Twitter talking about it too. They're like, they don't want the capacity to go up. And I'm like, would you really care if Cooper lifted the ban or like raised the number tomorrow? Would you say that it's dangerous, or are you just saying that right now because that's the way it stands? The fact that there are season ticket holders who didn't get a chance to buy playoff tickets really bothers me.
Yeah, see, that's why I don't think it's a local government thing. I think it's the team, or it could be PNC Arena or the league. It's like, I mean, we don't have maybe it's the league like telling us, hey, we need you to try to imitate outdoor seating by adding these HVAC units, and ownership is just saying like that's a temporary expense that we just we don't want to do
on top of everything that they're losing money on. So yeah, I get it. So it sucks this year. We're playoffs. We're just gonna have to accept that. I think it's gonna suck when the imbalance happens and Nashville has more fans and we don't, and they might have more of an advantage, and that's where it just comes down to that.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I mean, like, the reason I think it's not the NHL, I mean, like, I think the Canada situation will be kind of weird for the NHL because it'll be like they will definitely not have fans because Trudeau's government is like super cracked down at the moment. I don't think they had the vaccine rollout that we did, we being the US. But the reason I think it's more governmental is on June 1st, all of the restrictions are going out the window. It's back to normal. I don't think the NHL is going to tell people they can't have full capacity stadiums. As far as like the distancing,
not wearing a mask.
Standard, yeah. As far as the distancing standards go, clearly Nashville's not following those. If that is a national hockey league rule, you watch that last game, I mean, it looked almost like a 75% capacity stadium. So
Yeah, that was basically 2014 Hurricanes attendance right there. The last game.
Exactly. So at this point, to me, it just seems like it's just waiting for the official okay go from the state, and it's purely a PNC, like having to follow the local rules rather than it being the league thing, because the league clearly doesn't care if we bump up to 75% because Nashville's doing it. So why aren't we doing it? We have vaccines, people have masks, people are flying on airplanes in giant tubes of rows of 30 people, like tight knit or circulated air. So like, why can't we get in a giant stadium?
Ultimately, it should be up to the people. I agree. If you're willing to take the risk, you should go. But I did have a comment I wanted to make. This just came back to my mind. I saw some people on Twitter talking about this, so I'm not sure if it's actually factual or not. But they were looking at tickets in Nashville, and they were only allowing seating in the lower bowl. So while they had some kind of capacity restriction, there was like a warning or something, like a notification that said like this is a lower bowl only for TV viewing. So like they wanted to make it look like there was more fans than there was at the arena.
Huh.
It completely defeats all of the 6 feet stay apart thing by confining everybody to one space. But it's Tennessee. Their education system's just as bad, if not worse than ours.
Oh man.
Dang, shots fired.
The problem is there's been no consistency to any of the stuff. You can't go to your local butcher shop, but you can go stand in line at Walmart with 50 freaking people at the self-checkout line. So
and the
whatever.
bars that have a menu of crackers and soup, and then the hour mandates. Yeah, we don't want to harp on it too much, I guess.
We'll move on because we have no say in what actually happens. So anything that is said here now will make absolutely zero difference, despite the fact that people will get upset or agree with us. Like nothing we say is going to make a difference unless Cooper listens to us. Cooper, you listening?
Yeah, let's follow Cooper. And maybe
I think I did. I don't know if I follow him or not, but
that's our goal. Cooper and Trip head to head. We'll have like a.
We'll forget about Saint Chip.
Oh, Chip's never going to follow us back because Chip doesn't even read the comments on his own tweets. He tweets and then he moves on with his life. The man has got no time for us. It's kind of baller, actually.
He's OG.
Well, do y'all want to talk about our final playoff our final goalie predictions for this upcoming series? Like who we think is going to get the first spot before we answer fan questions? Damn it, I called them fan questions again. Before we answer Caniac listener questions.
I think we have to go with Ned. Game one. I mean, we all pretty much said this in the last episode. Ned is the right answer. I was of the mind that they would go with the vet and Peter, who's played in some big games in the past, but Ned has just been so good this season. Peter looked pretty shaky in the last game of the season, so I say Ned.
So I think Brendan Moore has. I think he has a tendency to start Mrazek over McElhinney, over anybody, because he has more confidence in him, and then like he considers him the 1A whenever he's healthy, and it's going to be interesting. But my gut says I would rather see Ned, and I think most people would want to see Ned too. Reimer is undefeated against Nashville, so I'm just going to drop that in there.
That's a good point.
What happens to all the Reimer hate? Let's bring Reimer back.
Well, I posted a poll on the Twitter account the other day and asking who people wanted to be the starting goalie, and it was like 77% voted for Ned. The rest voted for Peter, and I don't think anyone voted for Reimer. But I don't know. I mean, like I would like to see Ned. I would like to see Ned get the start just because I feel like he earned it this season. But also, I don't feel like we fully got to experience Peter. The thing is, I thought he played well, and it would have been interesting to have seen how well he would have done and how different our opinions would have been had he had the full team in front of him. Whereas his first game against Nashville I thought was good, or his first game back. So I'm thinking if he has that same production rate, things would be fine if he starts. I have a hunch that Rod will start him. I don't know. I could literally see it going either way.
It's just going to go down to whatever the goalie coaches say to Rod. I think Rod is very like the choices in your hands kind of person. It's not going to matter overall with what goalie we choose game one or, throughout the series. It's going to come down to like how the boys play against Nashville.
So yeah, from there we can move on to some Caniac fan questions, some Caniac listener questions. We'll start with the more hockey related ones, and we'll save the funny ones for last, I suppose. Caniac Josh, great friend of the podcast, wants to know who is the team we are most concerned about in the playoffs? Not just Central Division. It could be, like anyone later.
It's a tough one. I think in the more immediate future, a team like Tampa would scare me the most because we've played such tight games with them this season. But my nightmare is to play the Bruins while they're like buzzing 2 rounds from now.
Boston for sure.
I really would like to play Boston again, because I would like to take this team and do it again. I feel like the more we try, the more we have to eventually slap the shit out of Boston. And I want to slap the shit out of Boston. We've already gotten a really good win playing the Capitals. And I think that's probably my team that I'm afraid of, but I'll get to that in a second. But I want to slap the Bruins the way we slapped the Capitals in the 2018-2019 season. I'm afraid of the Capitals because I don't want to have to do that again. That was a miracle type moment in Caniac history. And I say that in the sense of like Miracle on Ice, the movie, or the event. But I don't want to have to do that again. That's stressful. I mean, if it has to happen, it has to happen. But I want to beat Boston.
Don't the teams get reseeded after we get out of like divisional play in the playoffs?
Yeah.
So it is possible that we could. I mean, this is obviously thinking way, way too far ahead, but it's possible that we could see a potential like Capitals, Hurricanes, Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
because
or Capitals or Hurricanes, Boston.
Y'all better start knocking on wood right now because
I'm not
now that we've said
anything.
It's gonna happen.
I'm not predicting anything, but like, don't you think that the biggest way to wipe away that Game 7 win that we had over them would be to lose to them in the Stanley Cup Finals? Like that would just, I don't even want to think about Caps Twitter.
You've set things in motion that can't be undone now.
Yeah, we did kind of push our luck, I think, with that. I mean, we were we were the better team. Come on.
Svetch can't die again. You know what I mean?
I don't want to play them again. You're right. I'd rather play a Charless, Torrey Krug-less Bruins.
Do y'all have any fears about any of the Western Division teams?
I watched a little bit of the Abs and the Golden Knights game last night, and the hits tally for those teams in the third period was 40-38. So yes, I'm a little scared of those teams.
That's the weird thing about the Western divisions, and I think we brought this up in previous podcasts, is every time I watch them, they don't scare me the way some of these major metropolitan teams do. And we play fine against them during the year. Like, it's not like we do bad against them during the seasons when we do play them. So I'm never afraid of the Western teams until the playoffs, because every team's different in the playoffs. But I'm definitely not, despite the fact that Vegas is the best team in the league. I'm more worried about playing the Capitals or the Bruins than I am playing Vegas.
It's a lot to do with the weight too. Like the Capitals show up like where you're like, all right, Tom Wilson, Ovechkin, giving them an answer to like them being dicks becomes more of a problem versus like teams in the West like Colorado and Vegas.
Dude, I'm just having flashbacks of the Bruins getting under the Saint Justin Williams' skin, and if they can do that to him, then they can do it to any team.
Yeah, Marchand really got to Justin Williams in that 2018-2019 series. That was frustrating to watch because you knew, like, you could look at Justin Williams' face and you knew he was getting got, and he was just like, I cannot stop wanting to murder this man. And then Marchand's just off like skating around playing Ratatouille.
It's funny. We went into that series. We were talking about like the three of us were talking at the time, and I like vividly remember this conversation. And both of you guys were like, "Yeah, I mean, people like really don't like Marchand, but like he doesn't really bother us that much." And then by the end of the series, you guys were like, "Dude, fuck Marchand. He's an asshole."
I still think he's an asshole. There's just something about him that I find endearing in a way that's unexplainable. I find his play to be more humorous and trickster than like belligerently violent. Like we talked about earlier, he's not a psychopath who would be a serial killer if he wasn't, like a hockey player. Whereas like Tom Wilson is someone I wouldn't even want to ride the bus with.
I'd rather play him than Tom Wilson and they play each other in the first round, the Capitals and the Bruins. I hope Marchand licks the shit out of Tom Wilson.
That'll be a fun series to watch.
Can you imagine what the DOPS would do? With that?
Poor Chara, man. He's got to go back on the ice with his old teammates and potentially defend Tom Wilson from basically his boys. Those are his boys. Chara could finish his career on the Capitals, and he'll always be a Bruin. Caniac Jason wants to know who we think will win between Florida and Tampa. The battle for Florida.
I think based on my answer to the last question, I want Florida to win. Florida has actually played really well against Tampa this season. They were 5-3 against them, and actually had their goal differential as well. They had a +7 goal differential in their 8 games against them. So, and they played pretty well. They had some games where it was pretty lopsided, like one-sided. That's going to be a hell of a series, though. It really is.
Oh, yeah. They're already beating the living shit out of each other, and I'm here for it. I honestly think that Florida is going to beat Tampa. I think they want it more, and I think they're scrappy enough and dickheadish enough. I mean, it's the same thing as like us with Nashville. Like, they're the ones that are going to go out there and they're going to be borderline, like, destructively violent in a way that Tampa may or may not show up and play.
The thing is seeing how, I guess, when they have Kucherov back and Stamkos, and how Florida plays against Vasilevsky, because McElhinney is not really a factor. He hasn't been a factor this whole season, which sucks because Mac Daddy was the guy for the Hurricanes. But I think Ekblad is out for a while. He's out till June, I think. If they make it past the Lightning, we'd rather play Florida because we can kind of beat up on their defense more. Tampa Bay has Hedman and McDonough and much bigger bodies than Florida does.
I'm so excited to watch that series. I'm not even kidding. I'm giddy just thinking about Floridians beating each other up. Caniac Johnny, always sending in the very important questions. What is the worst commercial you've seen on Bally Sports, and why is it the favorite thing about Chick-fil-A commercial?
This is you guys. I got the alternate.
I'll give you your ultimate means. It's funny that he says that and brings that question to us, because I've been talking shit about that Chick-fil-A commercial all season. I think there might be a new one out. Like, we went over to Chelsea's parents' house and they had like a commercial about a salad instead of the grilled spicy chicken sandwich. But all right, I'm just gonna unload. It's just gonna flow out of me. Why in God's name does Chick-fil-A, one, have a commercial for the chicken sandwich that no one eats? Like, who eats a grilled chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A? If you're raising your hand and saying me, go eat something else. Like, seriously, or go to a different restaurant. What's wrong with you? Pace is raising his hand.
I get grilled spicy every time.
The commercial, it doesn't even look good. And then they ask 2 different people, what's your favorite thing about the spicy grilled chicken sandwich? And they both say the chicken. Really? My favorite part about the chicken is the chicken. No shit.
What if they said the one pickle in there?
Honestly, but like, why not take a minute to really sell that sandwich? Be like, man, you talk about how great the bun is and how it always comes buttered and how you can choose if you don't want the butter. You can talk about the pickles and how it adds to flavor. Nope. I like the chicken. Cool. You had to tell me that twice. Give me a new commercial. Thank you, Johnny, for engaging in my plight. I feel understood.
So because I use the Bally Sports app to watch the Hurricanes games, I no longer get the Marley Drug commercials. Like, I haven't seen it with the new music yet. So that would probably be my least favorite commercial since they changed the music. But I'd like to take a minute to really think about where we have come. Like, how far have we come in our commercials as Canes fans? I mean, we used to have the water commercials. Those are terrible.
That's water, baby. I love that commercial. I used to yell it at the games all the time. They'd score a goal and I'd be like, that's water, baby.
Let it go.
Bill Peters' daughter is literally in that commercial. He was trying to get her like starting acting career. It's like, why do you come home or whatever? It's like, oh, I came to see you. And then when he leaves the room, it's like, she says something to the effect of, actually, I came home to enjoy my Connecticut water set. Oh my God. At least we moved on from those commercials.
I miss the steel tractor commercials. Now it's LS tractor, and it just doesn't hit the same way. There's something about that nice Southern man talking about steel tractors, and he looks you dead in the eyes and goes, "Steel, baby." And I'm just like, man, I want a steel tractor too. I'm going to go buy a steel tractor right now. But now I don't have that anymore. Now it's just LS tractor, and hard work is harder without the right tools or whatever. Just, it's not as good as steel, baby.
What, you mean feel the LS difference with LS tractor? It doesn't really get you going.
It doesn't ring as good as the same way as the steel tractor commercial. I'm kind of bummed about them. The other ones that are god awful, but they're expected to be kind of bad, are the Michael and Sons. Like the one where like Jordan Stahl's taking a shit and they're like call up all these boys to like bring him a roll of toilet paper, and they like come running into the bathrooms. It's like, why? I don't understand who writes these commercials. We are actively hurting our future sponsors, going after all these great Caniac companies that we just make fun of their commercials all the time. All right. Well, here's our last and arguably most important question, which comes from Caniac Chelsea. What is your go-to Bojangles order?
Oof. Man, I've gone through so many phases in life. You remember when I was a 2 sausage biscuits and a large sweet tea guy?
Oh yeah, and then occasionally you get extra wild and get a Bowberry. You'd be like grinning at me on the way to Bojangles during lunch, riding your Ford Taurus. You just look over at me, you're like, I'm gonna get a Bowberry today.
Yeah, so that was one phase of my life, was the 2 sausage biscuits and a sweet tea. And then I went through a phase where I was strictly Cajun filet biscuit combo. And then later on in college, I was a 4-piece Supreme guy. And then I went through a mini phase where I was a 2-piece chicken dinner.
Oh yeah, you used to do that every once in a blue moon in high school, and I always thought you were crazy because I didn't know anyone else that got the 2-piece dinner.
Dude, they actually have some really good fried chicken at Bojangles, like legitimate fried chicken. One of my friends one day, not a listener of the podcast and not a Hurricanes fan, so he will not be referenced on this. But he he was like, man, I haven't gotten any good fried chicken in a while. And I told him, I said, trust me, just go to Bojangles, get some fried chicken. It's not like KFC. It's not like any other fried chicken place. They have like the Cajun spice or whatever on the, like in the batter they use to fry it. So it's really good. Just give it a chance. And now my go-to is I guess I just get the Cajun flag, and then occasionally I'll like throw in one of my old phases of life. I have retired the 2 sausage biscuits though.
Here's the real question. Connor, is your go-to Bojangles meal still the Kid Supreme?
Dude, it's the most economical choice. You can get the chicken biscuit, or you can just get the Kid Supreme and get like refills. If you go, well, now people don't sit down in the restaurant because COVID. But that used to be the thing. That used to be the move. Get the water and then just get the whatever.
Yeah, that's the other thing you used to do. Not only did you get the Kid Supreme, but you like thought you were saving money by getting water with your Kid Supreme meal. I'm like, Connor, it's the same regardless of what drink you get. You're already paying for the drink. You might as well get sweet tea. And you're like, no, I just want water. I just want this little tiny water cup.
I was moving from like just getting in line with you guys and talking and like being social.
Like, I was there for the ambiance. I really didn't care much for the food.
Yeah, I was, just there to, I was never like hungry as a person, as a child or as a person. I still don't get that.
For those of you who don't know us personally, for whatever reason in high school, that's where we hung out, was Bojangles. Like other people hung out at each other's friends' houses or whatever, but like we literally just left school and went and sat at Bojangles, whether it was the one in Wake Forest by the Target or the old Winn-Dixie 9th grade center, or the one off of Durant Road. We hung out there a lot and just like did hood rat shit in Bedford. But
there could be worse things that you want your kid doing.
Yeah, we were pretty wholesome about it, I suppose. But you talk about like transformations of go-to Bojangles meals, go-tos. I'm the type of person who has like 8 different orders at Bojangles, and it just depends on how I'm feeling some days. Like I'm a big country ham biscuit person. Like my dad passed on that craving to me. I always get the 4-piece Supreme combo. I don't really do that as much anymore, but I used to always get the 4-piece Supreme combo. And then I've actually developed some creations over the years. Like I'll get a Cajun filet biscuit combo with fries, and then I'll order an individual gravy, and I'll dip my Cajun filet sandwich in the gravy, which is like,
it used to be a biscuits and gravy guy.
I like the biscuits and gravy too. I literally will eat almost anything on Bojangles menu. There's not a single thing there that I don't eat other than like cheddar bows and the pimento cheese. And like, I don't do that, but I'm probably the world's biggest Bojangles guy, which if you follow the Twitter account, you'll notice that I tweet at Bojangles all the time.
Everyone should follow Bojangles.
Yeah. Bojangles is like our go-to primary. Wish it was our sponsor. But I love me some Bojangles. People are always like, what do you want for like Chelsea's aunt asked me what I wanted for Christmas, or she asked Chelsea what I wanted for Christmas, like gift card. And Chelsea looked at me. She's like, what do you want? And I was like, Bojangles. So I got a bunch of Bojangles gift cards for Christmas. My mom used to send them to me in college on like holidays. So it'd be like Easter, and I'd get like a card in the mail with a Bojangles gift card. I love me some Bojangles. In fact, I kind of want some Bojangles right now.
4-piece Supreme now is what I'm going to. Since college, that's what I've become.
You
Just the 4-piece
upgraded?
Supreme.
You
Yeah,
upgraded to the big boy meal?
Yeah, now that I like have money to spend, that's not my summer money or whatever. It's 4-piece Supreme all day. And Jackie doesn't eat her biscuits, so I get her biscuits too. So it's nice.
I didn't know you ate that much food.
I spread it over 2 days sometimes, and Jackie will leave hers out and not want it. So there are times.
When Connor and I lived together, I'd come home and he'd just be sitting on the couch with a box full of spinach, and he'd just be sitting there munching on it. Do y'all have any final words before we wrap this one up? Any last funny comments?
Did Jeff Skinner score this week?
He did. He scored. Well, it was last week, but he scored on the 6th. So the second to last game against Philadelphia.
How many goals did he
Not Philly,
finish this season
Pittsburgh. Jeff Skinner's total goal count. Great question. Jeff Skinner's season career was he played 53 games. He scored 7 goals, got 7 assists. His plus minus was -10, and he got 14 penalty minutes and 111 shots on goal.
And $9 million.